Yeah, my name is Josh Tyron, and I am a photographer and a director. I've got two boys. I've got a 8-year-old, well, almost 8-year-old. We're within weeks, so pretty much an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. So we're split like perfectly. And yeah, I've got a wonderful wife that definitely helps out with all of this. And yeah,
Yeah, that's 7.5. You got to give them their half.
yeah. Well, it's funny because my 7 and like 3/4 year old has been trying to convince me he's 1 year older for 3 years now because he's like, no, I was 0. And he goes this and he goes, and then I was 1 and 2. And he, for years, just doubled down on that. Nope, I'm 1 year older than you think I am.
First of all, let's
If-
talk about how amazing that
yeah.
is.
Any indication of what I'm up against. Very
Oh
slim.
my gosh, that's genius.
I mean, it does kind of make sense, but
Yes.
then you try to argue it with a 7-year-old and it all falls apart.
He was like, Dad, I'm baking for like 9 months. Technically, that
Yeah,
came out.
yeah, he's definitely playing that
I
card.
love it. I love it. That's genius. I love it. Oh my gosh. So you got two boys. Yep, yep. And in the world of like, in the time, I guess, in between um 8-year-old, 4-year-old, so you had a full on 4 years in between. What kind of differences do you notice between your kiddos?
It's really interesting because you start off thinking. First off, I didn't like kids before I had them. I mean, not that kids are fine, right? Like we had to deal with them every now and then for work. We might hire a kid for a shoot. They're cute, whatever. But like, I was never into kids, and so I actually a lot of the girls I dated in the past, I was like, never gonna have kids, never gonna have
Yeah,
kids. And we did choose to have children. So, and it was all because I met the right girl,
there you
and we
go.
just changed everything. So I didn't have a sense of what it was really hard for me to visualize like a kid having a personality.
Mhm.
And my first kid, Finn, definitely is a character. He's the one that loves to try to convince me he's older than he is. And it was a great 4 years, just we were really close. And when we got pregnant the second time, I really had a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that he might be so different. I just thought, okay, maybe, this is the environment. They are completely polar opposites of one another. Um, in a lot of different ways. And Finn was always just really quiet. I mean, he was a weird baby. He like didn't. We never used a bib. He was so meticulous about
Ah,
eating, and so he just never got it on him. And Gene, not so much. He's just completely polar opposite. So it's really interesting to see their personalities shape and completely change. And basically everything I thought I knew, I didn't. I mean, it
okay.
just keeps surprising me.
Interesting. So you say that you initially didn't want kids. So what's something that you've learned about yourself since having kids now?
Something I've learned about since having kids. A lot. A lot. I mean, I learned that we thought we were ready to have
Mhm.
kids. We were like, we're like 30, we waited to get married. I was always obsessed with like not getting married before I was 30 when I was younger. And it just so happened that it worked out miraculously. It shouldn't have. It was a long story, but we decided to um we had a, we it was it, sorry, you can edit this down because it's a long story, but
No, no,
basically
you're good.
we got engaged, and we my wife was working for ABC, and she had the opportunity to go overseas for a year, and I had the opportunity to go with her. So we actually pushed our wedding back a year. And so by the time we got married, we've been engaged for 2 years roughly, and we were like, cool, we're going to buy a house and maybe we're going to start thinking about having kids. Well, we apparently are really good at making babies because it was like, boom, we were pregnant. Boom, we had a house. And so it happened really, really quick. And so even though I thought we were planning all this out,
Yeah.
it definitely felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, and then I can remember vividly we my wife, we thought we could figure you have a plan, right? And so you're like, okay, cool, we can work this all out. What we do for a living is essentially solve problems to make videos and commercials and all these things. And so I'm like, okay, we just need a plan, like we just produce this, right? And so we did like meditation yoga class, prenatal stuff. We did like the spectrum, the hospital that we go through, their classes. We actually did double baby classes. And then when we got in there, everything got flipped sideways because nothing went right. And it turned into this 36-hour thing. And, then I went into a C-section, and suddenly 3 days later, they're like, cool, you just leave with this thing. And it's just like, well, what do I do? And they're just like, nope, it's yours. You want to check that I strapped it in right? And they're like, you're good. And then I was gone. And so then that's when I really realized that I had no idea what I was doing. So
Oh my gosh. Yep.
but yeah, other things I've learned is I the hardest thing I've learned is probably to be able to admit that I'm wrong and actually vocalize that. Because it's a group thing. I'm really lucky that I have a great wife that we do this with, because I would be completely screwed otherwise. But it doesn't go super smooth all the time. And so sometimes, we've learned over the last couple of years that it's important to have that disagreement and not necessarily run away from an argument, or run away from, even if, not like yelling at each other or screaming, but like you can disagree, and definitely there's some feelings there, and like then it being able to admit you're wrong, and like, or if you're arguing with the kids, and going back to the boys, and being able to say, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't do that right, I'm sorry, I need to learn from it. That actually is probably the best thing I've learned, because I feel like that's the one thing that actually helps them more than it helps me, I guess. So, I used to be a hothead when I was younger, and I've got a lot more patience now.
That testosterone hits you, baby. I will say I agree wholeheartedly on that one, because I feel like I learned myself to be a better communicator, because it was just more so for me, like, I get my point across, and whatever happens after that, we're good. And after I had my girls, I had to, when they became people, because they go from babies to like people.
Yeah.
But when they start talking and all that jazz and communicating, you realize, oh, I have to actually articulate, and I have to slow down, and I have to listen, and I have to pay attention, because I don't want to say something. I had a serious dad fail moment the other day that like traumatized me. So I can't even imagine what I did to my girl. But I forgot how it started, but we were talking, and I thought we were joking. And I said, like, she said, I'm gonna go for a walk. And I was like, all right, bye. And my 6-year-old took that as like I was telling her to leave. And so she walked out the door. And I thought, ha ha, she's gonna come right back in.
Yeah.
And she stood out there. And I was like, and I go out and I'm like, all right. And I have the camera so I can see what she's doing. So I look out and she's crying, and I'm like, oh no, I messed up. And long story short is that she thought I was actually telling her to leave. So I had to like go in and like, no, honey, I thought we were like, so to get that level of like, okay, you really have to pay attention to what you're saying. You have to really consider that person's feeling, and really pay attention to the type of personality that person is, or else you're going to slip up and say something that might offend them or hurt them, or et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah.
I'm right there with you.
And we, it's so interesting now, because Gene is my youngest, and he is like, we can't kid the same way, because he takes things so differently than Finn takes it. And so it is, it's a delicate step all the time. And yeah, I totally put my foot in my mouth all the time. And Gene will let me know. Like, he doesn't take it from anybody, even though he's so much more sensitive. He will just like, if you hurt his feelings, he will let you know. And so he's been a great second kid.
I feel like that's common with the younger ones, because that's what Mariana, my youngest, that's the way she is. Like, she's always been a brute, but she's the most sensitive one. She will cry like that. But she'll tell you. She'll tell you exactly how she feels. And she doesn't mince her words. She said what she said. Which I love it about her, but at the same time, it's like, she's a sensitive thug. Essentially, is what it is. So curious, what do you think I mean, based off of everything, what do you think would be the most rewarding part about being a dad for you so far?
You know, it's this magical time right now before they hate you for a while, that like
Oh,
you are the best thing around,
oh,
right? Like you're an expert for some stuff. My
mhm.
8 or 7.5, 3/4, whatever he is, eight, I don't know. He is in this spot right now where he thinks we don't know anything suddenly, because he just went back to in-person school. So he's been at home for a while,
Okay.
and suddenly he's like, you guys have no idea. This is 3 days in. He's like, you have no idea what it's like. You don't know how things roll. And so he suddenly doesn't. But for the most part, like
Oh,
they
shoot.
think I know everything about everything. They think I can do anything. I mean, it's we're really close. And I'm lucky to have a job where I can work from home a lot.
Yeah.
And what we do, I have a ton of flexibility. I mean, just a ton. And my wife works with me as well. And so we get to spend a lot of family time together. And
Nice.
so the pandemic stressed everybody out, but it also was really an amazing year for us,
Nice.
where we were able to get really close to one another. And so, yeah, it's that friendship. And
That's awesome.
I think that's what I spend a lot of time thinking about too, because I get caught in my head, doing things. And I think a lot about like how to maintain that relationship going forward, because I know there's gonna be times where it just can't be like that, because they're gonna rebel, they're gonna have their own thing they want to do. I mean, I moved out when I was 17, and like I was off on my own, but before that as soon as I got a car, essentially I was like doing my own thing. And
Yeah.
um uh but I have a good relationship with my parents now, and so it's like, how do you bridge that 6 years that's going to be kind of weird and crazy? And part of it is just knowing that I have to give them that freedom, even though I want so badly to be like, no, 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 I can protect you from this, right? I can protect you from this. But they're not going to want that. Or if they do, like they're never going to learn anything. And it's so hard. So yeah,
They
what I
want
do in my
to do
mini
their own
therapy
thing.
sessions in my head.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. They want to start. That's like it's funny you say that, because I feel like personally I'm like on this thing now. I made the mistake of buying the Google thingies. So I don't know anything. Cuz anything it is, hey Google, it's like, "Oh, really? Really?"
Yeah, I turn that off. They don't even know what's on there. Like that's going to be their therapy eventually. They're going to be like
Yeah.
16 and be like, "What is this switch? What?" And then they'll be furious with me until they're 22. Like, they just don't even know what
Turned it off.
it is.
Oh my god, I
Yeah,
should
the
have learned
second we
from
got it,
that.
it's just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're actually kind of an anti-technology family, which is kind of, I don't know if it's going to bite me yet. It's worked out really, really well so far,
Okay.
but now that Finn's like in second grade, I think he's catching on that like
Hmm.
there's more than the original Nintendo, you know? Like, and he's beginning to be like, well, wait a minute, these guys have this. And I gave him, an MP3 player, and it's got the radio on
Oh
it. And so he's like listening to whatever he wants on the radio now. And he's like coming up, he's like, hey, Dad, I want to listen to this. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And so like, yeah, but we don't do a lot of TV, we don't do a lot of movies. We're a big
shit.
reading family, which is funny because I make commercials, and
Or
I
living,
don't
yeah.
really like watching TV.
Um,
Um, and so, yeah, eventually it's all going to change. I feel like we're on this cusp of a really big change now.
yeah.
Because first grade is like, I mean, that was easy. Every kid was still into really small stuff, and now second grade, you're
Yeah.
bridging that gap where some kids are like so far. Like this other kid he's friends with is like, yeah, I was watching Jurassic World, and this guy got eaten. It's like, yeah,
Mm.
we haven't done any of that. So
Yeah.
Finn's like, oh yeah, what about this Jurassic World thing? It was like, no, what about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? He's like,
Yeah.
no, Teenage
Let's
Mutants.
dial it back a little bit. I don't know. He's playing Duck Hunt. Everybody else is talking about Minecraft.
Yep. Well, no, he's a Minecraft, right? We gave him
Okay.
that.
Okay.
That you can't. That is a force. You just can't.
Yeah. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Yeah, that's funny. It's funny you say that. That like transitional age where they get into like, because I always say like you don't want to have the kid who is who is telling everybody Santa's not real, but you also don't want to have the kid that's like traumatized when everybody in the room goes, No, that's not. I know.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, you don't
right?
want that fifth grader. It's like, yeah, Santa's bringing me this thing. Yeah, no, I totally get that, and
Yeah.
it's hard because it's totally a selfish thing because you're like, no,
Yes.
this is really good the way it is. Let's do 4 years this way. But like the this, 1 year for a kid is so much more. For me, I'm old.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, another year. It's the same as 4 years ago, right? Like, and for him, he's like, I remember a year ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like, a 20th of your life has passed.
Yeah, that's the. I mean, it's exploration. It's all growth and new things, new life, new experiences. And I want to say, or I guess I should ask, what's the most like, I don't know, like revolutionary thing you feel like you've noticed your kid pick up on? Let's go with just this year.
Well, um, so our 4-year-old is like way deeper, right, than our 8-year-old was. He just, I don't know if it's the way he feels things, but like sometimes he'll just say stuff that's like super emotional, and
Mm.
I'm blanking right now that you asked me that, but like he'll say some really heavy stuff, right, and you're just like that,
Yeah.
you know, and he's uh like he's kind of fixated with like he's a vivid dreamer, and so he's like fixated with his brother dying and things like that
Oh,
because he's having these dreams. So like
heavy.
a bird with razors like kills his brother, and you're like, ah, dude, like we're eating cereal. I'm like, we don't let you watch any weird TV. Like, where are you getting that? And so
Uh,
like that has been, I think, the weirdest off the wall like
huh.
thing that we've been dealing with this year. Is it's very
Oh.
just had some heavy stuff that we didn't think would
Yeah.
come in from a kid. But I don't know if that really answers your question. So revolutionary. I mean, give me an example. I guess
Well, I
I'm
guess so. For like with me, I feel like going back to the whole Google thing, right? As far as like technology goes, I feel like my girls, like, I talked about it before, but one of my oldest daughter, she had an experience where there was a young man who was just pushing the boundaries of her comfort zone, right? And luckily it got nipped in the bud. Their teachers are awesome, so they took care of it and all that jazz. But I really had to have a conversation with my daughter because she's one of those people. Her personality is very like sacrifice her own happiness to make others happy. Like she likes to make people, and so I could tell the conflict in her. Like she was like, yeah, I didn't really like it, but I also didn't want to hurt his feelings or whatever, whatever. And we had to have the conversation about her like really understanding the fact that she is the boss of her body. Like and this is one of the things that we had to sit down and we had to talk, because it's like, yes, daddy is the boss, yes, I'm the boss, but your body is your body. Anytime, for any reason, anyone makes you feel uncomfortable, daddy, mommy, anyone makes you feel uncomfortable, you get to say, hey, no. You get to, yeah, that's your right, that's your choice. And so I noticed with her, and it's funny, we just had our parent teacher conferences and all that jazz, so we actually got to get audible feedback from their teachers. Like there's a level of confidence in her now. Like she really took to heart the fact that, like, I get to choose, I get to say back up or whatever the case may be. So I feel like for her, one of the most revolutionary things for her right now is the fact that she's getting into this place where she realizes she, for lack of a better word, has a voice, like has the option to say no, to be like, I'm not just following all these rules that all these adults are giving me. I get to have some power. Some So in that sense is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when that starts to happen because I mean, you definitely see, that switch around, 4 years old when they suddenly don't just listen. But it's different with boys. I'm actually so happy I don't have girls. I mean, it would be the I guess I'm up for the challenge, but that's not
Yeah.
what I'm in for right now. And
Uh,
so some of the conversations we have with Finn is like, you don't get to continue to touch people when they don't want you to, because now he's got this little brother and he gets really mad because he's like, why, we're playing, and like, and it's like, no, you can't be physical. And I feel like that's it's uh, what you're dealing with your girl is almost the flip side of what we deal with the boys. It's like, no, you don't get to do that to anybody else. And that's a hard concept for him to get past, because it's an innocent thing. He's like, no, we're doing this thing. It's like, yeah, but like trying to get him, the biggest challenge maybe is trying to get him to understand that other people feel different things than you do, right? Like, you think that you're having a fun time, but like it's not the case usually. And so like somebody's not going to have a good time, and you've got to understand that what you're doing is directly affecting that potentially. And so, which is a heavy concept for any kid. I mean, to get into their head, I mean, to teach empathy is like the hardest thing ever. And I thought it was hard when they were little, because well, maybe I didn't think it was hard, because I was like, oh yeah, use the cards, and it's like the faces, right? You gotta have the faces to show, because they don't understand words. But now it's like it's words and like it's complex.
It's like teaching
so it's just
language.
different.
Yeah. So what do you think would be like right now? And if we just look like the totality of the world, like we are hopefully on the tail end of it, but nevertheless in a pandemic, right? We have gone through so many changes, and I don't really get into politics, but all that jazz happened, right? And we are in a time where technology has eliminated borders, really. Like somebody in a different country 5 billion miles away can be in your face just like that. We talked about it earlier a little bit, like the Minecraft things. We have things where people are jumping in on these your kids playing Minecraft and somebody's cussing up from wherever, and it's like, oh, I gotta cut you off because you're so. I guess all that being said, what do you think is your biggest fear for your boys right now?
I mean, one of the biggest fears is that they're sheltered because we've been I mean, I guess I was sheltered growing up. Like I went to a really small Christian school that was like, I think I had like 20 people in my class for years. And so it wasn't that I was fairly sheltered, but I guess my fear is like that they're going to be not savvy enough to deal with people that are not like us, that we don't live like us, which is not to say that we're doing it right or anybody's doing it wrong, but like, it's just Finn's main interaction for the last 6 months was his little brother. And so like grappling with this idea of like, are we setting him back? Because now he's dealing with a 4-year-old, and like, yeah, you have Zoom and you have classes online, but it's not the same thing.
No.
And so there was a lot of stress that came from that kind of thing. And then, I mean, just pick a day, I could be thinking about, global warming. I could be thinking about the fact that, the United States is aging out, and they predict, a huge population being in their 70s and 80s, and what that's going to do for the workforce right as my kids get to 70 and 80 because I'm messed up. And I'm like, oh, but how do we prepare them for when they're 70 and 80? Like, I get down some rabbit holes sometimes when I'm working alone. Yeah. And it's just like, so yeah, I worry about a lot.
I think that's fair, because there's so many possibilities, so many different things. And I mean, every day the world is changing so much more rapidly, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it does. But like, if you go back, I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't. It's just, I mean, everybody thinks that their childhood was simpler, right?
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
And you long for it, and there's nostalgia, and it's like, well, yeah, but then again, I mean, maybe they'll think the same thing, and then they'll just, you gotta deal with it. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna never leave the house and die? I mean, like, you gotta figure out how to navigate the world. So I guess that's my biggest thing I worry about, is like, am I actually teaching them how to do that yet? And like, be compassionate and not just be, jerks. I mean, they're gonna be jerks. I was a jerk. I was a jerk for a long time. Hopefully they won't be a jerk for as long, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just cut 2 years off of that sentence, right?
Yeah.
I know. That's one of my biggest fears. Is like, I want my kids to be that medium. I don't want you to be a victim, but I don't want you to be a bully.
Yeah.
I want you to be right in the middle. And that's one of my biggest fears is having either side of that. I don't want my kid getting walked all over and trampled, but I don't want them stepping on anyone either. I just want to be in the middle, sympathetic, empathetic, kind, caring, just but still firm and respectable to themselves and others. So I get that. So let me ask you, because you did touch on it a little bit, with your childhood and growing up. What do you feel like? What do you feel like was the most influential? I guess I'm going to give you two. I'm going to say either moment or moments with you and your parents, specifically your father.
Well, so I mean, you know, I was so I'm one of four kids. I'm the third kid in line. I got a little brother. So I got two older sisters and one little brother.
Hmm.
We had a big age gap, but not a big age gap, but enough age gap. It was like my sisters and then my brother and I.
Yeah.
And when I was like 9 years old, my parents got divorced.
Mm.
And so that was a pretty, in retrospect, they did an awesome job, but they also did the worst job ever,
Yeah.
right? Because we lived in the middle of nowhere. So we were in the sticks, right? And so my parents separated and my dad moved next door. He rented the house next door, which was like, we were on a dirt road. So it was still like, like 500 yards away. But like, it was really messed up. Now, in retrospect, I really hadn't thought about it just this moment. I'm like, oh yeah. And I don't know what they were thinking. They were separated for like 9 years. So they couldn't
Okay.
get it together, but they also couldn't be divorced. And so
Hmm.
basically from when I was like 9 to 18, right? Like we were this long, whatever. And so my dad he worked hard and they never had to go to court, they never do anything. Like he just paid for everything, right? Like, and we didn't have a lot of money. He worked all the time. So I just didn't see him, right? Which was an interesting thing. And I feel like that would have really screwed our relationship if it hadn't been for when I moved to Grand Rapids to go to school. I don't I had an apartment, a couple apartments. I was shooting weddings. Because I've always done what I do. So I've pretty much taken pictures since I was 16. So it's kind of always my track. And but I ended up dating a girl and partying a little hard in college and lost my apartment. And I ended up moving in with my dad for a year. And that is what really, I think, salvaged that relationship. And not salvaged it, like it's when I actually got to get to know him, like because I just didn't know him. He just worked 60, 70 hours a week from when I was a kid on. And so I was super fortunate because of that, because we have a really good relationship now.
Nice.
Um,
Very
it
nice.
was in a time where he was able to, like, he was taking early retirement. Everything had started working out, right? And they were both remarried, and like everything had kind of like come back full circle. And so we had a good couple of years of just, hanging out before. And then I went off and did my own thing again and screwed a bunch of stuff up. So,
As you do, right? That's
yeah, yeah,
part
it
of the
was a good
process.
time.
So, do you feel like when you look back on it now, do you feel like, and this comes to be like, one of the, I guess, one of everybody's biggest fear, right? It's like, oh man, I'm turning to my parents, right? Do you feel like you have taken things from your dad into your fathering, parenting, and if so, are they what you would have hoped to have been the good things, or do you feel like you've
Um,
gotten some of the bad habits, or lack of a better word?
he was around enough to influence it. So I'm definitely more of a mama's boy, I guess.
Okay.
I was raised by my sisters and my mom, and so I always connected. I was more friends with girls than guys for a long time, which was kind of a weird thing, which is, turned around in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't mean to sound conceited, but I think I'm doing it way better than my parents did. Like, but I don't fault them for it, because like, it was the
Oh
freaking
my
80s. Like, you can go down to the library and get a book about parenting. No, you don't. I
God.
mean, you had no information, right? And for guys, I remember my dad, his brother, God, how old was I? I was a little kid. And I didn't know this. I'm just going back in timing, but like his brother came out as being gay. And my dad didn't know how to handle that. And so, like, he's not with his family, his brother who worked with him. They both worked at this factory, and he came out as gay. And so, like, it was a really weird time, and so like they were just trying to keep a head over, or a roof over us. You know, I always thought I was like super poor growing up, and now I realize like we were just like poor, like we had food, you know, like we had food, we had a car, you know, but like back then I was like, we were so freaking poor, right? And, like,
Yeah.
but like my dad, you know, he was just really focused on providing, and which was an interesting thing because he wasn't there, you know, so he's just paying all these bills. And so I think I did get that from him. I have a really strong work ethic,
Nice.
and that's served me really, really well. But like, you know, they just, every generation parents usually better is what I think, or has more connection or understanding of their children. I mean, you go back to, you know, my grandparents, my wife's grandparents, and like the stuff that our parents talk about is like not even close to what our experience was, and not even close to what our kids' experience is. And so it's just the evolution of parenting, right? There's just more information in the world, and if you're receptive to actually taking that in, like, you know, you're usually going to be a better parent. So.
Oh, nice.
But I did get from my mom like a yelling habit when I was younger, because I remember when I was, you know, I was the first boy, and like, you know, my mom's working all the time. My sisters were freaking saints. I think I did think there's some stuff that has come out lately. I'm like, my sister was drinking in high school, but anyways, so I was like, you know, the first rebellious kid, and we would yell, and we lived on this dirt road, and you know, I was like 12 years old. And my mom and I would yell all the way home from school. It was a 30-minute drive home from school because we lived in the sticks, right? And we'd get to my dirt road. I'd be so mad. I'd be like, just let me out of the car. And I'd walk a mile home almost every day. And she just right to a stop and be like, go. Like, I walked this dirt road home all the time. And I was just, so, you know, like I got some anger things that followed me through college. And it took a while to, well, it took meeting the right person, right? My wife, to like unpack some of that stuff and be like, wow, yeah, like that wasn't cool. I just thought I was the guy that like wouldn't take shit from anybody.
Yeah.
But no, I was kind of an asshole. Like, and so it took some time to figure that out, and which luckily we had some time to work on that before we decided to have kids, because then it was just like boom, boom, boom. But you know, there were remnants of that. You know, you're always like, you always look back 5 years and you're like, okay, yeah, I was bad. I was still bad then, and I'm getting better. And like, I mean, it's just always moving forward, hopefully.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, do you feel like it was primarily the relationship with your wife that helped you with that, or do you feel like your kids coming in had a greater part in that? Because, like, for me, I was I can't say the worst, but I was not a good husband. Like I'm divorced now, and but a lot of my husbanding, not a word, um, was just me trying to pick up what I thought was the right thing to do. Like I've never had that blueprint. Like even, you know, my mom got remarried and or married, I should say, when I was younger, and I had that whole dynamic, and I still didn't pick up anything. There was never, for me, there was never a space. I never felt like I had a space to be to call home, realistically speaking. I never felt like I had a home. I always felt like I was moving. And even when I was living there, it was just like blase. And I never had something to look forward to. So I would pull things from like Disney Channel. I would look around, you know, my friends' parents, and that's where I learned how to be a man, if you will, right? You know, the flute. So I guess all that to say, curious to know, like, do you feel like you were able to come to that realization about yourself because of your wife, or was it because of your kids, or the combination?
It was my wife who definitely helped me unpack a few things, and then that led to me being more receptive, moving into being a father. Well, I shouldn't say that, not moving into it. The first year, I mean, like I was like, cool. Well, Finn's a lump, and like I'm still gonna. I was traveling for work like crazy. I was shooting all over the country. Like there was, I remember Finn was 6 months old, and basically I was gone for 28 days. Like I was just like, oh cool, I got a job in San Diego, I got a job in Florida, I got a job in New York, oh I've got to go to Sweden for a week. Like I was just on top of it. Like everything was starting to happen in my career. And I remember her being like, dude, this isn't gonna work. Like you were home 2 days in February. Like, and when Finn was a 1-year-old, I was just like, well, he doesn't care, whatever, it's no big deal. And I wasn't really,
Mm,
um, I wasn't thinking about that, my wife and my kid as like a real person, I guess. I was like, cool, well, no big deal, they just sit at home. And there were some interesting conversations that happened, and
I bet.
luckily, um, I'm good at telling people what they want to hear sometimes, because
Mm,
I work with corporations, right? Half the time I sit in a meeting and then regurgitate back what they
right.
told me. They're like, "You're a genius," right? And
I love
you're trying to figure out those things. And my wife didn't take that, and she was just like, "Whoa, wait,
it.
whoa, no, like you didn't
I
really
love
say
it.
anything there." Like, and then she's like, "You need to actually show emotion. You need to like tell me what you're thinking, not what
Yeah,
I want you to say." And I mean, there was some really hard times, and we are about to celebrate 8 years. No,
nice. Congrats.
where is
Uh-oh.
it? nine
Uh-oh.
years. We're 9 years.
Uh-oh.
9 years this year. Finn had I thought he was 9 because he's been convincing me, and
Ah,
so
shoot,
I don't
bro.
know.
Come on now. This is gonna be on the internet
Um,
forever. Come on
we're about to celebrate 9 years, and
now.
it's been hard, but it's still hard. I mean, we had a big fight the other day. It was really, really hard, and totally my fault. Like, it was just like I was, I feel like some people freaked out at the beginning of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and some people are freaking out now.
Oh,
And
interesting.
some days I feel like I'm like freaking out now. Like, all that's starting to unpack now. Like I held it together great for a year, and we had to keep working. We had to do all these things, and now sometimes I'm just like, oh man, there was a lot of trauma like
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
and it comes out in different ways right now, and
Mm.
um, so it's still hard. But yeah, she definitely helped open that door to actually be receptive to the kids, and not just think I know what I'm doing. So,
That's interesting. That's interesting that you say that because I feel like a lot of the times you look at, in a lot of ways, or a decent amount of situations, I should say. You look at the kids as the turning point, right? You're like, oh my goodness, this little thing is my person. This is my blah blah blah. I had a podcast actually a few episodes ago. It was my buddy Arthur, who's in real estate, and he was saying the same thing. It's like his wife kind of had to come to Jesus, like, hey, this ain't gonna work. You can't just be out selling houses 24/7. I'm here, we're here. You got to figure that out. And so it sounds like you kind of went down the same road. I, I feel like it takes the right person to be able to get that point across to you in a way that doesn't come off as, hey, I want you to quit your dream, your career, your thing to be here for me, for us, etc. When you think about the way you process things and the way you go through life, like even just dealing with this, your wife, what do you feel like is something that you wish that maybe your parents would have taught you or given you? What's one tool you wish you would have gotten when you were younger? Now looking back.
how to really listen to people,
Mm,
like, that was what I had a hard time with for a long time, is like actually like listening and realizing that it's okay to be wrong, because that was part of my anger issues back in the day, was like I thought I knew everything. And I can remember actually, because I've got like I hung out with my friend. I had a really good friend for years, and I hung out at his house like more than I was at my own house. And I can remember his dad was just a crazy hothead. He would yell at us. He'd yell at me. I mean, he'd yell at anybody, right? Like,
yeah.
it didn't matter. I was doing the wrong thing in his house. He's just like going, and I wasn't even doing it. I mean, I was the good kid in that group, right? Like, I was the only kid not smoking and drinking. And I remember he would yell the stupidest stuff at us, and you'd be like, like somebody would assume something. He'd be like, assume it makes you an ass out of you and me. And he'd yell at us and storm around and throw stuff. And
Jesus.
but I can remember he just was never wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like, he just, nothing could ever prove to him that he was wrong. And so maybe that influenced me. I don't know, but like that was a lot. It just took a long time to but you know, yeah. And it's interesting, it wasn't, the kids definitely um got me on track for my career, which was interesting. I feel
Hmm.
like I was kind of bumming around a little bit. I was like a photographer, I was doing video, I was doing all these things, and I was like making enough money where it didn't really, like we were drinking, going to the bar all the time. We were young and doing all this stuff. And when I had kids, it was the first time I went like, whoa, I need to build a business. Like, so that was an interesting
Okay.
portion of having children, and that put me into high gear for that. But like, it also put me into, well, eventually it came full circle. So I guess that was a bad thing in some respects. I mean, we built a business; it was great.
Yeah.
It gave us a lot of freedom, but I mean, I did work a tremendous amount those first couple of years to the point where I was losing it, and then after a few years, Kathy and I were like, this isn't sustainable. We just can't keep going like this with me working the way I was.
Yeah.
And we made a hard choice like 4 years ago to be like, cool, we're going to take as much vacation as we can, right? Because that's the curse of working for yourself is you never take time off.
Yeah.
And so we're fortunate that we can take, I mean, because the way our business flows is there's a lot of time where I could be doing something to make the business go, or we could just go, cool, let's just take 3 days and do this thing, or let's do this and go visit your brother in New York or whatever. And so we try to take what some people would say is an excessive amount of vacation, but you can do it now, and like you're never gonna have that opportunity again. The kids aren't gonna want to do it again. They're gonna get older and they're gonna be like, I'm not going with you for a week to wherever. Like I got friends, like.
Yeah. 100%.
And so we've been trying to live that life for for the last 4 years, and it's definitely helped. I mean, it brings us closer together, and it's going to make me feel better as an adult, or as an adult, as a grown up, or whatever I am in 20 years. Who knows? So.
No, I mean, I get that. I can totally understand that. I mean, I'm pretty sure I met you in your house.
Yes, you did.
Like you want to talk about take your work home with you. We shot that commercial in your house.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's because I'm cheap, right? I don't want to pay for the location. Yeah, no, that was my house. Yeah, we sold the house though. So
yeah, I remember you're in the process again. Yeah.
What's so funny is we actually the pandemic hit and we had just moved into this new house, and like literally a month before, we were like stuck with another house, right? Because you couldn't even sell a house right away.
Yeah.
And we were deemed, I mean, we weren't deemed essential, but we were shooting for the hospitals. We were shooting for all these things that are essential. So nobody asked, right? So we just kept working.
Okay.
And we shot a hospital commercial in there right before I sold it, like the week before I sold it, because they're like, nobody will rent us a house to shoot in. And I was like, I got this empty house. Let's bring some furniture back over. We shot a whole commercial there.
Oh,
yeah.
That's see, that's awesome. So
but I do bring work home a little bit.
What's that?
I mean, you got to bring work home a little bit.
Yeah.
I do this because I'm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you start running your own business, you said it earlier. It's like you're always able to find a way to come up with something to push the business forward. Like, so downtime can easily be turned into, let's come up with marketing. Let's come up with, let's figure out a way to connect. Let's network. You can always find something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I get that.
Yeah, and that's like, maybe that's my biggest fear is like the phone, right? Like, see, the kids notice when I'm on it. They're old enough to be like, oh, yeah, Dad's on his phone. And so, like, because that's the thing is like, I'm always connecting my clients. And so, like, emails are coming through, and like, that's actually the hardest thing. I thought about that is like what they're going to remember when they're older. It's like, was Dad's head down in a phone the whole time?
That part. So for me, I course correct heavy, right? Like I never had a great relationship with my dad personally. My dad, as far as like my childhood, my dad wasn't very memorable. My stepdad and I, though we're amazing now, he's an awesome granddad. As in my childhood, that wasn't a thing. And so I always think to myself, like, I could think of a handful of friends of mine who maybe not a whole handful, maybe just half a handful of friends of mine who, their dads were there and they had good relationships with them. And I always wanted that. Like I always wanted, like, the quintessential go out back and play catch, right? And never had that. And so I turned that steering wheel so hard the other way to where me and my kids are full on coming up with games in the living room because we already played red light, green light, we already played tag, we already played, name that. So I feel like, that's one of the things where, okay, if all else fails, I want to be remembered as a good dad. Like everything else can go out the window. My kids can go, no, our dad was awesome. And then I can, I can die in peace after that. Like for me, because we do get caught up in, even when I'm not working, I can still be, whatever. Like I can
addicted. Yeah, I'm addicted to my phone.
easy.
I mean, you gotta admit it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at something. I'm like, why am I even looking at this? This is
Nope.
ridiculous.
Yeah. When I talk about nonsense, I was on my phone the other day creating my own Corvette. Why? Why? I was literally on
You never
GM
know.
website making my Corvette. Why?
You're turn the apartment into a Corvette and just
Yeah, exactly.
Dad thing. It's a 2-seater, so only one of them. One of you get to come with me, but
who did all the chores?
Yeah.
Who did all the
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to try to, remember when kids were baby, like Finn was a baby. I was like, oh, cool. I could do, I had all this time for projects and stuff, right? Too, because it just didn't, it was a lump. Like he was a lump that essentially wanted food. And now there's so much emotion and there's so much like, and Gene, the 4-year-old, he plays that too because he's just like, Dad, play with me. And then he's just like, oh, you're not into this. And like he just lays it on so hard and walks away.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I still got so much.
Because you can't just phone it in either. You have to like be because now they're at the point where they can see it. They can go, yeah, you're playing with me, but the level of energy that you're putting in tells me that you really don't want to do this. So you gotta be there.
I'm feeling I'm only 38, but like almost 39, but I'm feeling old. So my kids are really physical now. And it's like they're like suddenly into wrestling, right? Like, and I'm like the art dad. Like I'm like, oh, you want to wrestle? Oh, that's okay. Like, and so I've been actively trying to do this, but like I thought I was gonna die the other night because I have really big kids, right? Like my 4-year-old is 45 inches tall. Like that's not normal. Like I just really big kids. And they just ran me ragged. And so that's been part of it the last couple of months has been like, okay, I gotta get in shape because I can't survive these kids.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, maybe I should have had them when I was 18, but
no, I get the same way. I changed my diet. I changed the way I function in life because I don't want to be hobbling to catch up with my kids. And also selfishly, I want to be I want that boy to pull up to come get my daughter and then see me standing in the doorway like like pushing the walls aside. Hey, you here to pick up? Yeah, hi. Yeah, that's me. But there is a level of like you don't just want to be there as a parent. I feel like and again, like we talked about earlier, this might be one of those situations where everything moves forward and we all think it's different, but I feel like I want to be there physically able to do the things versus just being there. I want to be able to play with you at the park versus just taking you to the park and watching you play, essentially, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, how old were you when you had kids?
I was, how old am I now? I'm at 32, so I was 26. Is that right? Is my math right?
No. I don't know. All I heard was young.
Hilarious. I was, yeah. If we do our math backwards, I was 26 or 27. 26, maybe even 25. Early 20s, mid 20s when when I had my first daughter. And so bad, just so no concept of like relationship, no concept, because a big part of it, and going like really, if I have to dive in on it, a big part of it is just not having any level of self worth, like learning yourself in order to give yourself to somebody else is what I've learned only in the last 2 years, to be honest with you. That's something that, I mean, there's a lot of lessons I learned along the way with my kids, but to get to the point where I am today, where I can confidently go, okay, this is the direction I take, this is the course I'm going to go, this is the level of action, this is the way we're going to live. That wasn't there. It's like, you know, looking at my ex-wife like, hey, what do we do? What do you want to do? How do we, how, you know?
Yeah, I definitely had a sense of that. You like growing up in my 20s, it was like I had all these things that I didn't have, right? As a kid or growing up, and I was like, cool, well, you check the box, right? You have a girlfriend. And
Mhm.
like, oh, you've been dating a while, you move in. Like you do these things, and it all just like fell apart mid 20s for me. And
Yeah.
uh luckily I didn't marry that girl. Because I remember my mom being like, sometimes marriage fixes problems, and I was like, what? Like, no,
Oh,
no. That was the religion. That was the Baptist side, right? Like she was like, because you're living with her,
oh my
and
God.
uh, luckily I just walked away from all of it, and then I just was really fortunate, and I stumbled into better things. But like,
That's amazing.
yeah, it was. I sometimes have dumb luck.
No,
Like,
well, and to your point though, that what your mom said, that's the way I was thinking. I was like, oh, when we get married, this is gonna get better. That's the level of naive, like ignorance, like call it whatever you want to call it, that I went into my adulthood life with. Like I went in thinking, all right, well, we fight quite a bit on and off. I'm awful as a boyfriend, realistically speaking, infidelity, the whole 9 yards. I was just bad. Um, but if we get married,
oh
that'll
yeah.
fix it. No,
I
no,
mean, you do that with anything, though, really. I mean, until you recognize that that's a problem, like
that part,
you're chained to it. Like
that
you're
part.
screwed.
Yeah,
You're screwed.
yeah, yeah. I had the conversation the other day, like, um, talking to my girlfriend now about like I still to this day have this like trauma of feeling worthy of love. Like I still to this day I go, because I look back, as I sit today, and I can't obviously I can't speak for the mindset or the situation or whatever of my dad, right? I don't know what he's went through or was going through, but I look at it with me now, and you would need a crowbar, the jaws of life, you need a lot of things to get me away from my kids. Like you would need a lot of things to get me away from my kids. And so I think about that, like, how that all happened. And I think back to when I was younger, going, I get to a certain point in relationships, whether it be intimate or platonic relationships, and I start to pull back because I always felt like, all right, we got close enough. You're going to leave me pretty soon anyway, so let me get out of here. Right. And these are things that I pray. Oh my God, I pray that I can just freaking get all those things out when it comes to with my girls right now. I just want to get all that out of there. Like the whole concept of them never feeling not feeling loved or not feeling like they are worth it or worth fighting for. I want to blow that out of the water because and they're girls. I mean, not to be, you know, that can lead to weird places. So I push that hard. I push that real hard.
That's a hard thing that I don't know
Yeah.
I'll ever have to handle.
Yeah.
Um,
But it
it's
goes the other way with boys too, though, right? Because
uh,
you can be a
yeah, but
heart
I'm
that's
doing.
you can be a heartbreaker.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, but then you also, this is where it's hard. I was too nice, right? When I
Oh,
was younger, like when I was in high school, I was just too nice. I never really, I was the friend. And it's like, so how do you walk that line, right? Because you don't want your kid to be some jerk. But it's like, you got to figure out what you want to do or you're going to be in the friend zone forever. And like, that's a hard one that you got to figure out because like, my wife ain't going to help me with that one. Like, it's like, that's my problem to figure out with these kids. And I think it was because I lacked a lot of confidence when I was younger. and that kind of thing. But to get back to what you're talking about, this idea of not feeling like you're worth love, it's an interesting idea. When I can remember when we would have hard times when the kids were younger, and I would in my head be like, cool, it doesn't matter what I'm feeling, I just have to, this is the thing, I have to check the box and do this and do this and do this, because it's never going to be fair for me, because I'm for dad, like it's never going to be fair for, like, I just have to sacrifice whatever I'm thinking, and it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong or whatever. And it was the wrong way to think about it. It was like I was thinking that I could help my wife and my kids by not helping myself, right? And so like I had to flip that around and be like, no, I got to help figure out some of these things I've got going on here, or else I'm not going to be able to fake it on the other side. And that was, I mean, it feels like an eternity ago, but we're talking like 4 years ago, right? Like, I mean, 2 years ago, like 6 months ago on some of it. And it's still going to keep happening, but like that was a really different way of thinking that just like clicked one day, right? I mean, I'm sure it clicked because other people were helping, but like it seemed simple on this side of it, but it wasn't simple then.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I just gotta unlock.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, I'm actually down in Benton Harbor right now doing a shoot for Whirlpool.
Oh, cool. Pretty good. Is it multiple day? Yeah, usually run. Yeah, they run a ton.
Yeah.
Studios, right? Have you been on set yet, or are you just starting?
No, I've been here yesterday. I got here yesterday.
Yeah, I've heard their sets are super amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. And I'm here again next week. So they got us for this week. I'm actually shooting with my girlfriend. She comes in tonight, and she's gonna be shooting with me tomorrow. And then next week we're out here again shooting for another few days. So yeah, no, it's cool. Everybody's cool. I have a good time. I like you already know. I like having a good time on set. So
I miss having a good time on set. We had a big set get shut down in October. That we were doing a 5-day shoot, and we had to bring all the talent up from Chicago and Detroit, and we paid everybody to get tested and quarantine for like 5 days. And this girl threw a party, and so she had the primary speaking role. We went through 200 pages of dialogue in 5 weeks or 5 days, right? And but it's corporate speaks crap, right? And she had 2 days of just tons of dialogue, and then we were going on to other talent. And on the third day, she calls and she's like, hey, I got home to Detroit. I wasn't feeling good. I have COVID. I had thrown a party last Saturday. We shut the whole set down. And we had talent that had showed up Wednesday morning that from Chicago that they just had to get in their car and go right back. We had to pay everybody out. It was insane.
Wow.
I thought we could do it. Like I thought, like, oh yeah, we just produce it out. Like it'll be fine. There'll be so many checks and balances, and
yeah,
one person didn't follow the rules and it got nuts. So
jeez, oh my gosh.
But we've also pulled off a couple other ones. So
yeah. Dang, dude, that's terrible.
I'm sick of it. So.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like we all are kind of to the point where we're, I always say like once it starts to warm up, it's all rules are gonna go out the door. That's how I felt about it last year. Like I was like, there's no way. I say it all the time. There's no way you're gonna keep America inside on the 4th of July. So whatever plans you have, I got to tell you, it's not gonna work out. And we are at the point now where, thankfully we have a vaccine and all that stuff's happening, but we're getting right around the point where it's warming up again. Those rules are going to go right out the door.
Last week, because Finn started school on Monday in person, and there was definitely this sense of like, because we have, the school we're in is not that big, and so the elementary school hasn't really had that many cases. They've done a really good job with it. And the big thing was we live right next door to my wife's parents.
Yeah.
And so they're 75, 74, 75. And they finally got vaccinated. So we're like, okay. Like, I think, because we have like this communal backyard, and like Finn will just go over and hang out at his Oma's house and play cards and then come back when he wants to, like, in the afternoon. And so we just had to be a little more careful. And so, but it's been really hard the last 3 days not to be like, woohoo, like we're back, because it feels like it.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's some sense of normalcy. And so, but it's just not. It's just not. We've been really strict about it, and I don't think we're going to stop being strict about it. It's just, it's even more bittersweet because we got this little bit of like normalcy, and we're like, it could be bad. Oh no, it's not gonna be bad. Like, we got time still.
It ain't over till it's over, man. That's unfortunately the moral of the story on this one. So I guess you have obviously shared a lot of information, and I think a lot of it's going to be something.
Yeah, what is this, like a 2-hour podcast, right?
Yeah, no, this is 4 hours. I hope you brought your coffee. No, but I'm curious to know if you had to talk to yourself. Okay, this is you talking to you right at the, this is it. You're about to have a kiddo right now. You just found out, hey, honey, we got 2 stripes on this little stick. What would you tell yourself in that moment, knowing what you know today?
I would just ask myself if I want to be kind or I want to be right.
Ooh.
That's about it right there. Like that's what I have a problem with still.
Nice.
Like there's just some times where you can't be both.
Yeah.
And you got to choose one, and it usually should be kind when you're dealing with your kids. So,
that's solid. That's absolutely solid. I think, wow. No, that's such a powerful statement because, think back on it. Like really think about the concept of the man and, you're tough and you're protector and blah, 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 fill in the blanks, right? Like the concept of being, you're almost programmed to think like I'm supposed, even if I don't have the answer, I'm supposed to pretend like I have the answer because I'm supposed to be the leader, quote unquote, right? But understanding, through growth, experience, and like, actually, you probably just want to say, hey, I don't know. It's probably better off for your tribe, for your family, that you say, hey, I don't know, y'all. Let's work this out together. Hey, I don't have the answers, but I'd love to talk it out with you so I can understand your side of it. We can work it out together. So
yeah,
that's,
and I'm hoping that works. That works. I mean, that's the problem is, like, I got no, looking back in my life, it's like, I think these things are going to work, right? Because that's not what we did when we were kids. So you just don't know. You got to give it. So you just got to be flexible no matter what happens, I guess.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man, it's been awesome talking to you. And I think that you have provided a ton of good information because I know that, there's a Josh somewhere out there who is just about to have a baby and dealing with similar things that you were dealing with. And, hopefully, maybe this might come across his desk and he'll be able to go, oh, do I want to be right or do I want to be kind? And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, it's good to vocalize this stuff. So it's been fun.